An audio experience best enjoyed in stereo. The Huckleberry Show!
Welcome to the Huckleberry Show, the lifestyle and society conversation. I'm your Huckleberry John Claborn. This is a special segment I like to call the Spelling Contest. As in, this game might not be for you. Today we got episode number 2, The Trials of Mana spoiler review. Now warning, this is a spoiler review. If you do not like spoilers, if you do not want this game spoiled for you, I suggest you hit the stop button, take off your headphones, pull out your earbuds, do something. Here we go. So, let me just start off with my history of the Mana series. I go way back. I'm talking like 1991, Game Boy, gray Game Boy with the green screen. Final Fantasy Adventure was my first game into the action RPG genre. I played Final Fantasy Adventure probably about 50 different times on my Game Boy. Then, 2 years later, I graduated to the Super Nintendo's Secret of Mana. I put about another 50 runs on that game. Loved that game. Now, unfortunately, we didn't get the third one here in the States. It was called Trials of Mana in English. I'm not going to begin to pronounce the Japanese name of the series, but in the States, in English, it was called Trials of Mana, and we never got that until now. We got that now in the States. If you got the Collection of Mana on the Nintendo Switch, you got all 3 of those games, which I do have. I'm going to do a little mini review as I go along with this one. Not going to give that one a full review. This one's about the remake, the HD remake, 3D action adventure Trials of Mana. So, I go back with this series. Like, I love this series. I loved everything about it. It's like a cartoony, it doesn't take itself too seriously, but it's got a real deep tone to it. It's got like a big boy game feel to it, even though it looks a little cartoonish. So just jumping into it, we'll start off with the graphics and the sound of this game. Like I said, the graphics are cartoony, but the animations are on point. Like they have a lot of animations in this game. This world is really animated. Everything from like trees to bushes to bugs to the enemies to your characters. Everything is very well animated. Now the faces are kind of basic. If you notice, like on the cutscenes, like the mouths move and stuff like that, and there's basic facial frowns and surprise and stuff like that on their faces, but it's kind of simplistic. They don't get too detailed, too realistic in the animations in this game, which is fine. It's a Mana game. Like, this is what we've grown to love. It's got the whole charm, though. Like, if you look around and you're running around, like, you love running around in this world. Like, it's like a playground. Like, almost if you, like, jumped into the old school Ronald McDonald's with the characters, and, like, if you were jumping into, like, the Muppet Babies, just, like, a nice charm to it, a nice charmy look to it, and that goes along with the music. They remade all the music in this game from the old one. Now, I played the old school one on the Collection of Mana, so I played the 16-bit Trials of Mana, and note for note, they remastered all the music, and it's got that Mana charm to it. Like, if you've played this series, you know exactly what I'm talking about. How it's like a lot of xylophones in the songs, a lot of little bopsity, like little bippity boppity songs, and it just feels really charming to play this game. Like you're in a real life fantasy land with its own made up music style and everything. It's just wonderful. I can't get enough about this music. I'm a music head, as you know, so I pay real close attention to that. But everything down to, like, you know how you used to go in Secret of Mana, you go in the shops and the merchant is behind the counter. He's just freaking dancing his ass off. He's just having a ball in his store all by himself. And it's like that in this remake. All the merchants are dancing around. You'll see some town folk, you'll see kids running around and stuff. Everybody's almost got like an upbeat mood when the mood is upbeat, not when everybody's dying and like towns get wrecked and stuff. But it's got a It's got a real throwback style to it. Like, they captured that perfectly. Just the charm of the whole Mana series was captured perfectly. Going into the controls, now, I don't know what it is about Square and their games, but the first thing I always have to do in a Square Enix game, Squaresoft, it doesn't matter what iteration of Square you play, I always have to go in and adjust the controls. They just have some wonky defaults. Okay, so in this game, the attack button was A. Now, I played this on Nintendo Switch. And if you are a Nintendo fan and you play Nintendo, you recognize the A button as the cancel button. Why is the cancel button the attack button? What? And then just the map button, the menu button. I had to go in and rechange and replace everything. So once I got the controls set how I liked it, it was fine. But just the typical Square default controls, just random as hell. I don't know what tester played that and said, yep, that's how I play video games. Okay, bro. No. But once I did that, it was fine. The camera in this game is good. The camera is good. It's got a lock-on system. I didn't find it colliding with anything. I didn't really have it stuck behind a tree where I couldn't see the battle or anything like that. Everything was pretty. Now, I wish it was a little more zoomed out. It was kind of close in behind your character, so like on boss fights, it kind of got messy when you're trying to dodge out of AoE and stuff like that. The camera was just a tad too close behind you, and I had it pulled out all the way that the settings would allow, but I don't know, I wish it could have pulled back just a little bit more, maybe even the field of view widened a little bit more. It felt more like I don't know, like 80 degrees maybe, and I wish it was a little wider, probably about like 95, maybe 100 degrees. Field of view would have been better, but not too bad though, not too bad. I really can't complain. I played the whole game without complaining about it too much. So jumping into the game mechanics, now the game mechanics in this game are excellent. Having played the 16-bit version after I played it, the NES version was really skimped on, it was a Super Nintendo game. It really didn't go that deep into like stats and abilities, things you can upgrade, things like that. But this game, oh my goodness. Whew. All right, so let's start from the top. First of all, you get 6 heroes in this game. They all have their different roles. You've got Duran, who's your typical sword and board. You got Angela, who is your magic damage dealer. You got Kevin, who is your fist brawler. You got Charlotte, the healer. Hawkeye is like a dual knife, agile type of hero. And then you got Reese, who is jack of all trades, not really good at anything, but decent at most everything in the game. Plus, you got summons. So you are only allowed to pick 3. You pick one main hero, and you get 2 companions you pick. So that alone is just replay value all over the place. It makes me want to play this game through 6 different times just to see all 6 stories. Because you get your main story of whoever you pick as your main hero, and then you kind of get a little bit of the story with your side companions. But it just makes me want to play the game 6 times. Like, it was that good, and the stories are that different to the point where you're just like, well, what's her perspective? What's his perspective? So that was dope. Now, the leveling is great. I got to 65. I got to level 65, and I put about almost 50 hours into this game, my first playthrough. And leveling feels very rewarding. There's certain games where leveling up just does nothing. In this game, you level up. It's a nice animation, nice jingle sounds, and then there's so much stuff you can, upgrade, put points into this, maybe rearrange that, put some gear on, that kind of thing. So the leveling was really, really satisfying. So breaking it down, you get 5 different stat categories that each hero has. You got strength, luck, stamina, intellect, and spirit. Now, they do kind of like what the old school system did. Strength is your physical attack. Luck is more like crit and things like that. Stamina, of course, is your hit points and your ability to defend attacks. Intellect is your attack damage, magic attack damage, and spirit is your healing power. So every time you level up, you get points, and each character has all 5 of these, and you gotta divvy up the points. Now, I played Angela, Angela was my main character. She was the magic damage dealer. So all my points went into intellect, but she had points in strength, something in luck, and there were spells. So like strength, it was red, and red was her fire spell category. So, put it all in intellect, but if I wanted fire spells, I had to put some in strength. So it wasn't like you were just dogpiling your points into one category on each hero. You were like having to actually think and strategize how to split your points up to maximize your abilities and your moves. Because of that, your training is what they called it when you do these stats. They call it training. So you split them up and it unlocks your moves. It unlocks your abilities as you go. And so like I said, if you put your points in strength, you're unlocking your fire spells. You're unlocking your attack damage. If you put your points in luck, that was the wind category for her. So you were unlocking wind spells and things like that. So it was cool. It was cool to be like, okay, that's not her main category, but if I ignore this category, I miss out on a whole class of spells. And then, as you know, in a mana game, you need all the spells. You need your wind, all the different elements, wind, fire. You got Sylphid, you got Shade. So you had to divvy it up and you had to think about it. It was pretty cool. I like that. I really like that. Now, moving on from there, each hero had different classes. And as you leveled up, you got to upgrade your class, starting at class 1, 2, all the way up to 3. And then, spoiler alert, at the end of the game, you unlock class 4. This is like my final form, class 4. So that was cool. And every time you upgrade your class, you unlock these things called, what do they call it? Locked abilities, where they were passives, but it was like, they were passive abilities that you had all the time. You didn't have to assign them. You didn't have to put points in them. You just got them because your class leveled up. So, that made you have to pick which class. Each character had a light and a dark path. And, they played different. They changed your play style. So it's like, dang, that almost made me want to play each hero 3 different times just to see all the different play styles, all the different classes that they could be. This game was like, man, it got deep. It got deep quick for a little cartoony looking action adventure game. Let me tell you what. But that was pretty cool. So going up from classes, so now you're unlocking moves and abilities. Now, moves are your spells. Like I said, those go on your bars. These are your main attacks while you're battling. You're casting spells. You're doing sword attacks. You're doing heals. Like, these are all your different moves as you're playing the game. And then on top of that, you have these things called, what do they call them? Class abilities. So a class ability is like a final ability. You stack up these points and you fill up this meter. Once that meter hits the top, you can unload a clash strike on your enemy, is what they call them, clash strikes. And they were like power moves. They were like ultimate finishers, things where you could like finish a boss and hit him for the last 5% or whatever and just unleash your meter on him. So it kind of gave you something to like build up and save up and time right. Like, oh no, I'm about to do a boss fight. Let me save all my meters and just unleash it on this boss when I get there. So that was cool. So you had your weak attack and your strong attack as you're fighting. And that's what builds up your clash strikes. And you had to mix it up. You couldn't just mash on the weak button. You couldn't just mash on the strong button. You had to combo it up. They had different combos. You go weak, 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 strong, weak. And that was a combo. And if you finished your combos right, not only do you get clash strike points, it does extra damage. So it incentivized you to get down the combos for each character to do max damage, to fill your meter up as fast as possible. So the combat was never boring in this game. Every enemy had different weaknesses. You had to hit some from the side. You had to hit some from the back. You had to dodge AoE attacks. You had to dodge frontal attacks, sword strikes, charges, spells. Like, this was some action adventure goodness right here. And not to compare it, but I'm going to compare it. Final Fantasy VII Remake, this game blows it out the water to me. Like, the Final Fantasy VII Remake is like a cool kiddie introduction game if you're just getting started in the action adventure genre. And then you jump over to Trials of Mana when you're ready for some big boy gaming. You know what I mean? Like, this game got deep. So, going from there, now you have gear. And the gear, it'll upgrade your 5 main stats, but on top of that, your gear also upgraded your HP, your MP, It touched on your physical defense, physical attack, magic defense, magic attack, things like that. But it was still basic to go along with the series. So with the gear, you only had your main weapon. And each character only had one weapon in this game. It wasn't like Secret of Mana where each character had the little wheel, the menu wheel. No, this was different. Each character, like Angela, she only had staffs. She can only, equip staffs. And then Duran, he can only equip swords and things like that. But then you also had headgear, your body gear, and rings. And sometimes it would be a bracelet, but mostly rings. So a weapon and 3 armor categories. And it was cool because, you had to pick and choose. Like, well, this one has got wind defense, but this one has MP up. Well, this one has fire defense, and that one has HP up. So you had to sit there and pick and choose. I had to swap out things for different fights. If I got wrecked, and I'm like, man, I need that fire. I need that fire defense. Let me equip everybody with their fire gear. So it was cool. It was cool to be able to have different gears, and they weren't just useless as soon as you found an upgrade. Like, you still had a reason to hang on to one that was even a few levels underneath you. So that was cool. Items. The items were great. Now, the Mana series was like the main staple was the wheel system. How the menu was a wheel, the items were a wheel, just like a wheel around your character, and you spun this wheel and picked your items, picked your menus. Well, in this one, the menu wasn't a wheel, but they kept the items as the wheel menu, and it was great because you had a whole list of items you can pick from, but you can only fit so many items on your wheel. So again, you had to stop and think, like, what items do I need to bring to this fight? What items are not useful right now and I can just leave in my inventory, because you can only put, and actually 9. So like you could get like a whole bunch of potions, right? But on your wheel, it only fit 9. So you can only use 9 potions in a boss fight, even though you might have 50 potions. You can't just spam potions and spam your way through a boss fight. You can only bring 9 of each item. So even then, you had to like use them strategically. You couldn't just blow through them just because you had a surplus. So it was really, the strategy in this game was super high to the point where, you can just button mash through this action adventure game if you wanted to. But if you really took the time to learn the mechanics, get down, your efficiency with your spells and your items, like, you could really overpower yourself and just blow through this game. By the time I got to the end of this game, I was on it. I had my spells maxed out with damage. I had my healers just popping off heals on everybody. I was just nailing these bosses. It felt good. Now, it has collectibles. Now, this is a Mana game, so there's no side stories, there's no side quests, things like that. You're really pretty much just on the main story, going through the game, and leveling up was really, as you went. You really didn't have to grind too much. I didn't see any grinding until end game, and that's fine. That's cool. But there were collectibles along the way, which kind of gave you something to look for, something to do. You had seeds, and you had cactus. And the seeds were from the original game. The original game had these seeds where they dropped off of enemies, and you go to an inn and you could cash them in. They would give you different items. They sometimes would give you gear and armor. So that was kind of cool to get like a random kind of generated aspect of this game where if you had too many, you could sell them. So it was a good way to get money. It was a good way to get extra items and just fun surprises. Like, whoa, I didn't know this was in the game. Cool. And then the cactus, Square has a lot of these things in this game, in most games, where as you go, you have different systems that you can add to your overall characters to better the game. So as you found more cactus, it unlocked things like discounts at the shops. You can get a discount on your respecs. You get XP boost. You could get more chain abilities and things like that. So finding cactuses was cool, and it had an incentive for you to do it. It was just little bonuses, but all these little bonuses added up to, increase your playability, so to speak. Now, going to the story of this game, the story was cool. Now, mind you, this is a remake of a Super Nintendo game, so the story is Super Nintendo-esque, if that makes sense, whereas, like, it was a story, but it was cool, but you really not playing this game for the story, if you know what I mean. Like, you're playing this game for the gameplay. You're playing this for the gameplay. So, but it was cool in that each character had their own story arcs. There's 6 different story arcs. There's actually 3 different main bad guys. Now, I picked Angela. She had a main bad guy. His name was Crimson Wizard. There were 2 other bad guys in this game, but you kind of beat them early on. And the main bad guy, Crimson Wizard, kind of took over as the main bad guy as you went along. But if you picked a different hero, then they had their own main bad guy. And then the Crimson Wizard would be the side bad guy, and you kind of beat him early. And then, so it was cool. Again, it made you want to play the game 6 different times to see everybody's story, to see all the main bosses and stuff like that. So it definitely had replayability in the story, but I would say the story was not the strong point in this game, and that's fine. That's fine, because it didn't have to be that deep. We're playing Secret of Mana for the gameplay. So that goes into post game. The post game is pretty good. Like, they give you an extra story that is not included in the Super Nintendo version. So, like, there's an extra boss, there's extra harder dungeons and harder enemies to fight, which is, incentivizing you to grind, unlock more levels, unlock more abilities and moves and things like that. You can finish collecting. You can actually up your difficulty. So if you beat the game, I beat it on normal mode, but it's got easy and hard mode. So I might want to go back in my next playthrough when I pick the other 3 heroes. I might put it on hard and, see if my chops are any good, see if my gameplay got any better. So the post game and the replayability of this game is sky freaking high. I am going to replay this game a lot if I don't get bogged down with too many other new games to play. This is definitely a come back to game where you're going to come back to this. You're going to keep a save file going, 1 or 2 save files going. I might start 2 different save files, just having different heroes and seeing which combos I like better. Like, I just can't wait. This game is like, I needed this right now. Coming off of Final Fantasy VII, if you want to go back and watch the review, if you haven't watched the review I did on that one, you'll see how disappointed I was with that game. It was just way too shallow for my likes. And then I don't get it. Like, it's Square. This is the same publisher. How did they make these two? How did the same publisher make these 2 games on 2 totally different spectrums? Maybe that was on purpose. Like, here's an easier game for you guys to get into the Final Fantasy series, jump into the Final Fantasy story. Here's some simplistic gameplay, some nice visuals, but overall easy game to play, not too hard to figure out. And then we've got Trials of Mana. If you really want to sink your teeth into something, if you really want to put down some hours into a game, some action RPG-ness, that, it can be as easy or as hard as you want, because you can control your AI and the characters, your companions. You can totally control the AI, just like in Secret of Mana. You can make them all the way passive, where they're just basically following you around, or you can make them all the way aggressive to where they're blowing spells, they're using items, they're mashing in the faces of these bosses and these enemies, and they're not dumb. These guys will roll out of AoE. They will not stand there and just get annihilated like in Final Fantasy VII Remake. They will roll out of the way and actually be companions. They will be useful. So this game was just high marks for me down the board. I don't give number reviews, but I highly recommend this game. Go get Trials of Mana, whether you play it on PS4 or Nintendo Switch. I played it on Nintendo Switch. Either one, graphics look great, sounds great, plays great. Highly recommend it. With that being said, though, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Go ahead and check out, too, the Collection of Mana. That's on the Nintendo Switch. That will give you all 3 games. You'll get Final Fantasy Adventure, Secret of Mana, and Trials of Mana, all in their 8-bit, 16-bit glory. Love those games. I'm currently trying to play through them right now. So if you have the time and the budget, grab that, too. It's actually cheaper than Trials of Mana. So you can get them both for about the same price as a $60 game and just have 4 great games to play. This whole Mana series. Now, there's other Mana games out there. Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. These 4 right here are the only 4 Mana games that count to me. The Secret of Mana remake does not count. These other Mana, Swords of Mana, Legends of Mana. Okay, look. They do not count. These four, if you're really into the Mana series, Final Fantasy Adventure, Secret of Mana, Trials of Mana, and Trials of Mana Remake. Go get them. Go play them. This is dope. But I'm John Claborn. That's it for me. Trials of Mana, spoiler review. Till next time.